Alright, now we got the caulking tube, the putty all dried up on this front sight. So that's nice and secure now. I had a big wad there of putty, so the JB Weld, so I sanded it down. I just have this, use a sanding drum and then this little grinding wheel as well. And I just went along it and sanded it down like so, just to kind of smooth everything out. Sanded both sides, got that putty all sanded off and smooth. Another thing I did actually off camera was I put a spring in here, so this actually snaps back on its own just to make it a little bit harder to charge, make it feel a little bit more realistic, that kind of thing. You grab, I had the spring I took out of the caulking tube for the BT Delta handguard that we had earlier, so I used that spring. I cut it to length that I wanted to, and then I just fed it into this area. I just kind of got the one end in there and then just kept twisting it like such until it got the whole way in. Once I got it the whole way in, I just fed the rod back down through the spring, so I had the spring stuck in there. So now it kind of goes on its own. I'll give it a little extra oomph when charging it. So the other thing I wanted to do was put the front sling mount back on. Now we have our choice here because one came with the BT Delta and one came with the airsoft handguard. Now though, I'm going to choose the one with the airsoft handguard. They're both metal, so it doesn't really matter to me. The one that came with the airsoft handguard, you can see it's a lot longer and thinner, so we're going to need that length to actually fit the whole way through. So we're going to go ahead and use that one. And I'll just move the BT Delta one aside. Maybe I'll use it for a later project or something. So for this, just going to get a drill bit. I grabbed an 1/8 inch. And I'm just going to drill basically right through. I'm going to aim up a little bit just to kind of give it the little bit more support. I don't want to quite go directly through the joint, but I'll just drill directly down. Pretty much straight through there. That's pretty good. So I just drilled a hole directly down through. And we'll try to feed this down in. Now it's a little bit tight. I kind of did that on purpose just so I can basically thread this thing in there. It'll pretty much probably hold on its own without me doing much to it. Let's see what we can do here. Maybe I'll actually just that on there without actually even screwing the other side, but actually I might have to make the hole a little bit bigger, so we'll back that out. But yeah, you get the idea. I'm going to thread that through, and then we'll have our front sling attachment again on the handguard. Alright, well, I got the hole drilled. Unfortunately, this actually, where I drilled up too high, it doesn't actually go through the whole way, so I can't thread in the bolt on the other side, but that's okay because we'll just JB Weld the crap out of it again. I love that stuff. I'll just fill that hole with JB Weld, shove that in there, and we should be good to go. That's all that'll take, so we'll get that glued in there, make that look fancy, and there we go. Alright, well, I finished JB welding that's in there, so we'll just let that dry. Kind of smoothed it out a little bit, got everything in place. Once that dries up, that should be in there pretty snug and tight, so that ain't coming out anytime soon. Alright, next, while that's drying, we'll go ahead and smooth out our work over here. Actually, it's relatively flat, so I may actually just sand that down by hand. So I'm just get a block, piece of sanding block, and just gently rub that and just get that smoothed down. So I'll just kind of work at that and get that smoothed out and nice and flush. I did finish grinding out the inside of this with the grinding wheel. So I used the grinding wheel and a Dremel. I had to keep dipping this in a bucket of water every about 30 seconds. I'd kind of grind a row, dip it in water, grind another row, dip it in water, and just keep doing that. Got both sides of the interior there. That's all ground down. The reason being so I could fit a barrel right down in. So now the barrel actually fits into the shroud. Hooray! Alright, now we're getting somewhere, right? Starting to get in place. Now I just need a way of mounting the shroud to the cocking tube. I'm still debating on what I'm doing that, so I'll get back to you when I have that idea finished. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish sanding and just do a little bit of detail work here, and then we'll continue from there. Alright, we're back. I just finished sanding that epoxy putty flat. I used a combination of the sanding block, and I actually used a little assistance of this sanding wheel I got for the Dremel tool. I use a Dremel for everything. So that's nice and flat, looks pretty flush. That'll look nice once it's all painted up. Then we just gotta figure out how to attach to the cocking tube here. Alright, we're back, and I'm gonna try to mount this handguard here onto the cocking tube that we've finished up. Everything's pretty solid and nice and dry. That snaps back on its own. I secured this piece here with a little bit of super glue just to keep it from, with the charging handle from snapping back, keep it from falling out so it doesn't fly forward. It was starting to come out a little bit, so just making sure that's not going anywhere. Everything's pretty tight. So what I want to do is secure this to this piece. Now we kind of lost this area where the pin goes through, so can't use that anymore. So we're just going to JB weld this entire piece on to the cocking tube, and I'm going to basically have JB weld running the whole way down the length here. And then I'm going to use this piece that came with the BT Delta, and I'm going to reinforce the back end. I'm going to slide this through after I glue it on there and line it up with the barrel. That way there's like a little support toward the back end. And this is going to need cut and trimmed to length. But until we can do that, take care of that later. Now, keep my JB weld from dripping down in, I'm going to put this duct tape down on here. I'm going to basically line the inside with duct tape here to about where the handguard should go. I'm going to kind of just bend it up and around. And try to get this in there like so. I'll just kind of press the tape up against the edge. So once we get that on the edge, pressed up on there, I'm going to put this in place. Basically I just want tape underneath just so I can run JB weld down the side here. So I'll just go ahead and start doing that. It might take me a couple minutes to get this about perfect, so I'll do that and we'll start with the JB weld. Alright, I got the tape back in here. This is just so the epoxy doesn't run the whole way down through. I think everything's fairly secured. I just used the rest of the rod that I had for the push rod there. The same rod I use this for just to kind of push the tape up and stuff like that. So I think everything's secured and in place. I mixed up some epoxy putty, and I'm just gonna keep just dumping some down along the cracks here, and hopefully we'll get everything epoxied in place. I'll just kind of squish it down in there and get this in place, and then we'll go from there and I'll show you how to reinforce it with this other piece I got up here as well. So after this dries, it takes time since every time I do the JB weld it does have to dry overnight, but it's a nice little project, just step by step. We'll get there eventually, but just keep adding to it and it'll get done. Alright, well, pretty much I'm just going to keep adding along the edge and try to keep things neat, and I'll probably wipe up the excess epoxy, but I'll go ahead and try to get all that done. Okay, I finished putting the epoxy in the crevices here, so just kind of smoothed it out with my finger a little. Gets a little bit messy, but got all the epoxy in there, and we'll just basically let it sit like that overnight, and we'll have a nice solid weld across the top here. I'm just going to put a couple cans of stuff here just to keep it from rolling, because I keep wanting to roll, but other than that, it's good to go. Alright, well, I'll be back, and we'll just kind of reinforce it after it dries up, and that'll be it. And we're back. I got the handguard dried, the epoxy putty, or the JB weld, sorry, on there. Everything seems to be pretty smooth, actually. I don't know if I have to sand anything. I don't think I have to really do much sanding. Everything seems pretty smoothed out for the most part. I just kind of let it dry. I did all the smoothing and stuff with my finger before it dried, so I think it looks pretty decent. After it gets painted, you probably won't be able to tell really that there's the epoxy there, so it should look quite a bit better once it's painted. Couple things left to do. I'm gonna go ahead and I would say we'll work on the pin. Since there's this hole here, just for aesthetics reasons, I can't put a pin through here. This is the original pin that was holding on the handguard. I mean, everything's pretty tight on there, so you don't need a pin or anything, but can't put a pin through there because the barrel actually runs through there and inhibit the barrel, so we're just going to cut the pin here, the head. I'm just going to JB weld it on one end, and we're going to cut the end off there too and JB weld the pin onto that end just to kind of make it look like it has a pin through there, but not necessarily functioning at all like it has a pin, so that's just for aesthetics reasons. So for this, we're just going to use cut-off wheel with the Dremel. Oh, something's messed up there. Okay. Just tighten it up. And I don't think I need to go very far. Just basically move that out of the way. Cut the pin. Just gonna go around and cut that head off. I'm gonna cut the head off that, and I'm gonna cut the bottom of that. So I'll be right back, and there's no point in me filming this, so it just takes a little while. Okay, I'm back. I just finished cutting the pin head and the tail of the pin, getting that ready for gluing, and that's just gonna basically, I'm just gonna get some JB weld and just glue it right on there, make it kind of look like it has a pin through the front handguard, kind of just filling that hole some. And I'll do the same thing to the other side, make it seem like it has a pin through there. And I might do a little bit of patchwork with some epoxy putty. So I'll do that in a minute, though. Kind of the last thing, that's just non-important. Another thing, everything seems pretty stable, pretty hard. It's not going anywhere. I mean, this is starting to feel pretty solid right now. So, but I'm just gonna go ahead. I'm gonna reinforce this a little bit. I'm gonna put this piece inside the handguard as well, just so that it's kind of reinforcing a little bit more with the back end against the barrel. So again, we're going to take our cutoff wheel. Now this goes right up against the barrel, so I'm going to have to cut this top piece off here. And it doesn't have to be super exact or neat. Basically just cutting through that plastic. I'm just going to take this top chunk off here. And like I said, it doesn't need to be super straight or neat or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's going inside the gun anyhow. Just pulling off a little bit of that excess plastic. Sometimes there's chunks of plastic there. So I don't really need this piece. It's garbage. Throw that away. Pretty much I just want it so that kind of just on the end and side like this, and then it'll just be kind of glued on the top and the bottom. So when it's in there, I'll just kind of get it positioned in there right. And we'll either use the JB Weld or epoxy putty and just kind of get that in the position. Might use the epoxy putty to kind of get it in the correct position before I actually finish it off with the JB Weld. And hopefully it'll look something like that. Not sure if you can see down in there. Let's see if I can get that. But it's dark. So I'm just kind of sliding it in like that and getting that in position. So I'll be epoxy puttying that in there. I'll probably just do it off camera just to take my time and work with it a little bit. But hopefully it'll be kind of near the end, somewhere in that area. So when the handguard slides on, everything's lined up. And I'm going to test fit it and stuff before all the putty and stuff dries, but hopefully everything fits in correctly. It should. I might do that now, actually. I'm just kind of, I might probably just try to mark this off to try to get an idea where exactly that's gonna line up at. I think I'm hitting a little issue here. I'm just hitting against that that nut in there that holds this piece on. It's kind of bumping up against the edge of this. So I might have to trim this side just a little bit. So this is just a lot of trial and error. Just trying to get this fitted properly. And I think it squeezes past that nut now. So I'll get it in the position. I'll probably just mark it with a pencil and then try to glue it into place. And then I'll just be gluing the pin parts on. And that'll be pretty much it for the handguard, other than painting it. So I got some paint on order. I ordered some more Brownells type paint. I ordered paint that's actually specific for plastics. It's for firearms. It's alumina hydride 2 or something like that. So I'll show you that when it comes in. We're going to paint it with this. It should come in next week sometime. So I'm going to be painting the plastic parts with that since you can't bake it. I have baking lacquer here, but that's for the metal parts. So, alright, the other thing I want to do, I'll work on the rest of that off camera just to get that stuff mounted in there. Other things we want to do is take this apart here. We're going to get rid of this cocking handle. I don't want that cocking handle there. So, pop that off. Okay, we got this here. So, we don't need this anymore. We got our own different cocking handle. So again, we're just going to chop that off with the cutting wheel. Sometimes this gets stuck. I'm going to just use a different, this is a diamond cutting wheel. I know I got different types. It's a little bit thinner, so it just cuts through the plastic a little easier, but so we're going to get rid of that. Don't need that garbage. Now we just got to smooth out where we made that cut. So we'll just get a sanding drum for the Dremel. I got this little sanding drum here. And we'll just kind of smooth it out, make it look nice. And I also have this little type of sanding drum. This does a little bit better as far as smoothing stuff down some. This is a little bit coarser. This is like a finer type of sanding. That's pretty much it for the charging handle. Okay, got that sanded off. So that piece is done. Now I got a little bit of work to do on this. I don't want this hole here, so we're going to be filling that in with a JB Weld. There's the hole on the top. Oops. First thing I want to get rid of is that hole on the top here for the front sight, and we're going to get rid of this hole in the back too for the gas port that they sell, but I'm never going to use that. For the small holes, I'm just going to use the epoxy putty, which you just basically probably don't need very much, but I just cut a chunk off with a knife, put the rest back, peel the plastic off. It's garbage. Move some of the stuff to the side. Sometimes this stuff gets a little sticky, so it actually helps if you wet your fingers a little bit. And kind of, I just like to pull it apart and put it together like this to knead it together. It's kind of, and then eventually just kind of you play with it like Play-Doh. This stuff is waterproof, so it'll still dry even if it's wet. So you can use a little bit of water if you want to dip your fingers in water or anything like that. Just knead it till it's all one uniform color. Stuff dries pretty quick, so you do have to kind of work a little bit quick with it. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill these holes up that I don't want on both sides of the receivers. If it starts sticking to your fingers, maybe just wet your fingers a little bit. Then it won't stick as much. Then we'll go ahead and do that. I bulge it out just a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything. Just because you want a little excess, and then we'll sand it off once it hardens up. So get that little bit of excess. It's better have a little bit too much than too little, because then you'll have gaps and holes in there. So I'm going to fill that in. Just kind of fill in this top portion as well. I'm just trying to kind of work a little quick, because this will start hardening up on me soon. Again, I'm just kind of making sure it's bulged out a little bit. That way if it's out, I can just sand it down flat. No big deal. It's already starting to harden up a little bit on me here. So stuff does work pretty quick. As you can see, I'm kind of coming a little bit down into the inside there. I'm going to have to sand that later, just because that's where I have my hole for the charging rod goes through that. So mostly just want to fill in that top, fill in that back. Now this stuff's kind of basically too hard to work with. It hardens pretty quick. I could barely tear that apart, so that's pretty much done for. And we'll just let that dry, and I'll show you what I do for sanding, and we'll get that worked up in a little bit. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. It's only just been a few minutes. This stuff's pretty hard. I just finished putting the pin on. I actually just used some super glue and epoxy putty to just kind of put a little bit of putty patchwork inside here and kind of shove the pin in there, and then also use super glue to really secure it in place. The glue is still a little bit wet. It's drying now, but I mean, it's on there pretty hard, so I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I also put some putty down in there. Once everything gets painted up, it should look pretty good. I think everything's still going pretty good there. So, handguard's coming along. I still haven't mounted this piece yet, but I'm going to go ahead and start sanding this stuff off. I want to get the two halves together here first, I think. So, I'll just sand this flat. I'm not pushing very hard. I'm just getting it enough to flatten it out. Same with the back. Doesn't take much effort to get that sanded down. And we'll do the same thing on the other receiver half. And the back end. You might want to use a dust mask too when you're working with this stuff. It gets a little bit dusty, it kind of blows around. Alright, get those sanded down. Hopefully they fit together. They do seem to fit together. I'm just going to kind of hold it together, and I'm going to get the top here. So yeah, it's looking a lot better now. I think everything's sanded pretty good there. Kind of hold that together. It gets rid of that hole up there, so I'm going to get rid of the hole in the back. Just kind of sanded flat. I took a little bit of the paint off, no big deal though. We're going to repaint this anyways, especially once we get this filled in. Alright, now I'm going to make sure this still works. Since I got putty back here, I'm going to make sure that nothing's really inhibiting movements of parts, such as the rear sight. Just kind of hold it together. Seems pretty good. So I don't think I need to do any kind of work on the inside there. The rear sight moves freely. I do need to do some work on this inside because I'm blocking where the charging handle thing goes in. So I have these small like cutting wheel or grinding wheels. I like to use those. You could probably use the cutting wheels as well to kind of just get in there and grind it. I'm going to try this, see how this works here. I'm just kind of getting in there. I do having a little problem getting in some of the small spots in the corner. So I got this like round grinding wheel too. I'll probably get in there to get that in a minute. I'll just go ahead and start working on the other side for now. Oops. That sucker's coming loose. If it's not adhering, we got the general shape at least. See, this is why I don't really care for using the putty a lot of times. I thought maybe I could get away with it for the smaller area, but it doesn't adhere to the metal super great. Now I have a couple options here. I could super glue this piece back onto there, which should be good enough. I'm guessing that'll hold fairly well. We'll try that. Or I could try using the JB Weld, which will definitely hold. It's just that JB Weld's a little bit harder to work with in tight quarters like this. The super glue ought to do it though. That ought to hold it in place, so I'll just let that dry. Doesn't seem like the back's coming off any. Depends on how much space kind of it's holding on to, but I mean, we could put a drop of super glue on there just to make sure, but we'll check the same thing. Yep, see how that comes off. Well, while that came off, I'll just go ahead and get rid of that part that I didn't want. Oops. Anyhow. Just gonna sand it down. Alright, there we go. Got rid of the piece I didn't like anyways there. Pole should fit through there no problem. Again, we're just going to super glue that sucker on there just for ease of use. Gotta work fast with the super glue because that crap bonds almost instantly. And that's really going to hold it on there, I think. I don't think it's going to go anywhere now. Alright, that's glued on. Just kind of, again, using... I always like to keep multiple glues around. Mainly super glue, the epoxy putty, and then the JB Weld. Like I said, the JB Weld really is where you want to use the main holds. That's why I'm going to actually, I had planned to begin with, is to use JB Weld for this main large piece. I don't want to use the epoxy putty for a large piece like that, just because it does kind of come apart a little bit. Hopefully it'll just check for fit again. Fit and finish here. I think we're okay. Everything seems to be fairly flush. I'm going to go ahead and just screw this screw in there just to kind of hold the pieces together. Making sure the pieces do hold together fairly good. Think we're okay. Now see, there's a little bit down in that hole. I can go ahead and actually, I think this grinding wheel will work. Yes, it will. I'll just go ahead and run the grinding wheel down the hole and just make sure that's opened up enough. Make sure that's opened up enough. I'm going to take it apart, clean it up. Yeah, see? Just making sure. So I didn't finish grinding this. Just need to finish up that a little bit. For that, I'm just going to grab the round type tip. Do a little bit of detail work on the inside there. Getting these holes cleared. That should be it, pretty much. For this piece, I'm going to JB weld that. All I'm going to do is take a chunk of tape. I'm going to put tape on this outside here, and then I'm just going to fill this void with JB weld up to that point. We could sand it a little bit inside after it's done, but we'll fill that up and let that dry. I'm not going to do that right just yet, but because I need to still get this piece mounted, and I'm going to have the barrel and make sure everything lines up properly before actually mounting any of that stuff. So you gotta make sure everything's done in a certain sequence and steps. Oops. Actually, put a screw through the bottom since I gotta run the thing through the top. Just to hold that together. So we'll go ahead and make sure all this stuff lines up properly. Okay, that cocking handle still goes in there. Now I'm just gonna make sure that goes down. I think I'm gonna need to actually take a little bit more off the top. It looks like, see how, that's why you always gotta test fit everything. This actually isn't fitting in there properly because this top piece is too much here at the top, so that needs trimmed a little bit more. Go ahead and cut that. Make sure the cutting wheels on there tight. Sometimes plastic can be a pain in the butt to work with as well, just because it melts while you're trying to cut it. It heats up and starts melting. Careful, it gets hot. I'll burn myself a number of times with this stuff. It gets hot and melts and then kind of jams up the wheel. It's just a lot of trial and error. Just trying to get everything right out. See, I just burned myself there a little bit. It's kind of, I get impatient and grab this stupid plastic before it's really ready to be touched. So, a whole bunch of trial and error. See, that kind of still slides on. I'm going to make sure everything lines up properly. And that goes in. Okay, looking quite a bit better. Kind of want to force that down in there as far as I can get it. pretty much just test fitting everything. You want to make sure everything's test fitted before you start gluing stuff together, because you'll screw something up otherwise. See, that's what something's a little bit messed up there. So yeah, I just gotta keep doing that, trial and error. Eventually I'm gonna figure out where to put that piece. I think I gotta cut a little bit off the side again. It's getting jammed up on the... Oh, that's why I put it backwards. I was gonna say I trimmed that. It's getting jammed up a little bit on the nut that's in there. Okay, that works better. Now it actually goes forward if I put it in there correctly. So I check things, double check things, check it again. Make sure everything's in there properly. So, alright, well I'll just keep working on that and then I'll get right back to you guys. Alright, I'm back. After playing with this for a while, I keep trying to get this positioned. I determined that this is more of a pain in the butt than what it's worth. This is solid enough. I don't think I'm going to need any kind of extra reinforcement in here. I see that there's a crap ton of JB Weld that's came through. Oh, by the way, after I JB Weld everything, I just pulled the tape off. If you didn't already know, I didn't mention it before, but I had taped it earlier to keep the JB Weld from running in too much. It did run down some of the walls, which is perfect a little bit, and that's bonded in there really tight. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. That's really secure, so I don't think this is necessary at all. It's just a pain in the butt, more pain than it's worth, so we're throwing that out. We're scrapping that whole idea of reinforcing that, so I just wasted your guys' time on that. Alright, anywho, we'll go back to playing with the receiver halves here. And I'll switch this out. We're going to put a piece of tape on here just to run the epoxy. Keep it from running through, and we're just going to mix up some JB Weld and fill this up, this void, and we'll let it dry overnight. And that's it.